You're welcome back. This is Newsfile, your most authoritative news analysis show. And this is a very special edition that is looking at the maritime boundary disputes between Ghana and Ivory Coast at the ICLOS. And my guest Theo Achampong, who is a petroleum economist. He's at the Aberdeen University, and he's the interim vice chairman, Ghana Growth and Development Platform. Professor Kwame Infojo is national coordinator, Maritime Boundary Secretariat and international law advisor, government arbitration team. He's with the team. Also former lecturer, Monash Law School, Melbourne. Of course, Michael Koto is the managing partner at Confidence. That's a Swiss Ghanaian strategy and transactional advisory firm based in Accra, Johannesburg, and Lugano. Michael is a development professional with more than a decade's experience in international development research, policy, communications, corporate strategy, advisory, and economic analysis, formerly of the World Bank and the Africa Center for Economic Transformation. He is the senior country advisor of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and a member of the board of directors of Raphael Health, a health investment company. He's also has advanced degrees in development policy and has co-authored several policy papers for international audience. And that's why I say again that I'm so excited to be hosting these gentlemen. Adil Malik Kweku Bako is the editor-in-chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper, a colossus on his own. Thank you very much. And Theo, now let's try and get back a bit.
Sure.
And if you don't mind, let's take it on from where Kweku Bako tried to lead us.
Right.
What do you look at as far as the arguments of Ghana and the arguments of Côte d'Ivoire are concerned in this court?
Well, clearly, there's no denying the fact that there's almost 4 decades of history behind what Ghana is claiming. But we also need to understand that the issue of the maritime border has not formally been delimited. And so on that basis, it's on that basis that Côte d'Ivoire went to the court to seek all these, measures for pursuant to the full ruling being made in 2017.
What ought to have been done? Sorry, when you say the borders have not been formally delimited, what ought to have been done so that to put the matters beyond dispute? What ought to have been done?
So we can actually even go a little back to sort of a bit of history. That in terms of this boundary, that it was first defined in what they call the Anglo-French Agreement somewhere 1889, and the first delimiting in quote of the border came about somewhere 1889. I confessed you. And following when we discovered some oil seeps in the Tano region, some in 1915 thereabouts, we kind of saw the need then to actually recognize or to make a move to delimit the boundary. That never really did happen. So fast forward to 1963 when we passed the Territorial Waters and Continental Shelf Act of Ghana. But even within that provision as well, the boundary was not formally delimited. And then you come to 1982 when the UNCLOS Convention was held and the law of the sea processes took place. Again, it was mandated on Ghana and Ivory Coast or other parties who were subject to the agreement to go and delimit the border. That did not take place. And so we fast forward to 2007 where we make discovery of commercial discovery of oil, and suddenly everybody realizes that, well, there's something in here for us, so let's make a claim. And in 2008, there was a professor at University of Legon, Professor Raymond Benin. I need to check the name here. Raymond Bagulu Benin. He gave a lecture in which he said or raised the issue that Ghana has to make a move to actually put this thing to rest. It didn't happen again until 2010 when Cote d'Ivoire makes the first move, approaches the UN and basically asks that the issue of the maritime border be delimited. In terms of what we are saying, or what I've looked at, basically the issue of equidistance versus equitable, it's not really settled as far as I'm concerned in international law. And so, yes, Ghana has been arguing the orthodox approach, which is that, yes, there is history, there's context, 40 years, and Cote d'Ivoire cannot just wake up one morning and say, this all doesn't count for nothing. But we also have rulings, and there's a plethora of cases, and based on the use of the equidistance principle. And in recent times, the principle, even though sets the foundation for delimiting the boundaries, that is not cast in stone. And there are cases, Qatar versus Bahrain, Gulf of Maine, Libya versus Malta, and recently in Nicaragua versus Honduras. In all of these instances, what the court tries to do is just to use the equidistance, which Ghana favors, as the first point of the negotiation. And then ex post, you ask yourself, is there any reason, are there any circumstantial factors that would lead Ghana, or that would lead the court to believe that we should go contrary
to use of equidistance,
to the use of the equidistance? So your first best case solution would be that, yes, you prefer equidistance, but you need to again look at history, context,
and not only Ghana, the UK, the US, all favor the use of equidistance. They tend to,
yes, and then there's other jurisdictions which also favors that. But the matter,
so it does look as if, in the very legal language, that the civil law jurisdiction does not favor use of equidistance prominently, whilst the common law jurisdiction want to use equidistance rather. So that we are told of France and Spain, for example, who would want to use the equitable doctrine.
Yeah, that's really at the heart of the matter here. And this issue is not settled. And so for people to now come and say, oh yeah, Ghana has a strong case and all of that, I'm like, okay, we only have to go back to look at the rulings that have come both from ICLOS and from the International Court of Justice and all of this, and take a step back and realize that yes, in as much as we do have 40 years of history, there is that room in there, and against the backdrop of subsequent rulings that have come in other jurisdictions that, well, it's not so much to do at equidistance, but the fact that
it may not be appropriate, Theo, but see, here in Ghana, for example, if you had a right to land, and you claim you have a title to a piece of land, and you sat down and allowed some trespasser to get onto it and to use the land for 12 years. The law says you are forbidden from trying to say that it is yours. If you had a claim to, say, let's say a contractual claim as into seeking money and stuff, when a period of about 6 years is gone, and you have not put in that claim before any court, the court will say their doors are shut to you completely. I said again, it may not be appropriate. Why can't I apply this particular principle of, say, acquiescence or estoppel to this particular case, where over four decades, the Ivorians never saw the need to make a claim? Now that there is some, good money coming out of there, suddenly they are interested.
In fact, they allow exploration activities to proceed relative to petroleum exploration agreements.
They allowed all of that. Their own president, Ofoboyen, at a point had to, put pen on paper and agree to this.
There's a decree by Ofoboyen. There's been a gentleman's agreement, in quote, over the years, but there is no basis, so in terms of formally submitting an agreement to some higher body or some higher UN body to say, this is it, these are the boundaries, this is what defines, Ghana's borders and whatnot. There is nothing.
Look in the crystal ball, and I don't expect that you'll be a prophet of doom. What do you see that the courts might want to say, Ghana, hold on, we will not use equidistance. We will want to ask ourselves equitably, shall we not be doing justice to Cote d'Ivoire if we use the equitable doctrine? That even though they may not have laid claim to this for all the period, when we look at the area, we think that you have eaten into their terrain a bit, and so they should get something small.
I don't want to prejudice the merits of the case. It'll be.
No. I can tell you the judges are not listening to you.
No. These are things I expect, the team of which Prof is part of to be arguing in the substantive case at the court. So, yes, you can make forecasts. Yes, you can look into the crystal ball and say, but at this particular moment, I wouldn't want to commit myself in saying that, this is what's going to happen. All I can really say is that there's precedent in international law.
Which says that?
Which says that the so-called equidistance approach is not really the end and do it all.
Okay.
Right? That you have to look at other contextual factors into account. A bit of history, a bit of economic rights and all of that. And I can only see the judges, sitting on the panel bringing some of these things on board. But as to what the aggregate effect of that would be on the ruling, I cannot tell you at this material moment.
I see. So that even it's a bit too early to think that to use the provisional measures ruling to look into the future.
You can use that. I mean, there's a possibility. Cote d'Ivoire clearly.
That is simply to say that they don't have a frivolous claim.
Yeah, they don't have a frivolous claim, and the court clearly says that yes, they do not have a frivolous claim.
No, I thought,
but
natural justice demanded that the court listen to them.
Yes.
But that not necessarily mean that you have a good case.
I see.
Yes.
Even if you bring a bad case, the bad case ought to be looked at the court.
That's not so.
Yeah.
No,
if your case is frivolous, they would have thrown him out.
No. This is a very big case. This state parties involved in a huge dispute that has all sorts of political, international implications. You don't treat it as if it's just a small case. So giving them space to articulate their case before dismissing it, I think would rather be in the interest of the sub-region and the continent.
Let me tell you what our judge said. Our judge said in his separate opinion, that's ad hoc Judge Mensah, he said, I have some doubts about the claim of Cote d'Ivoire to the maritime areas in dispute. In particular, I do not think that this claim has serious prospects of success on the merits.
Thank you. I'm with him.
But that's one.
And he's a huge mind. It's not just one. He has a wealth of experience when it comes to this area. No joke about it. Yes. So his opinion is not to be underestimated.
He's a former president.
Yeah, he's a former president of the court, right?
Yes. Clearly, yeah. We're not dismissing his opinion, but we also have to look that this same court has also ruled in some instances where they did not follow that clear line of argument.
But are there no other cases where the court ruled in favor of the equidistance?
I'll come to you.
The argument here really is that we cannot conclusively say that.
Okay.
Yes,
we shouldn't be optimistic.
Okay. We need to give room. Give room.
Okay. Now this is where I come. This is where I come to, Mr. Fojo. And this show is brought to you by Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner. MTN. Welcome to the new world. Sasso Spray, fresh and powerful. Star Assurance, your solid partner. Lipton Tea, the #1 tea brand that you can find, and Yumvita, delicious way to grow. Get that for your kids, and they will enjoy it and give you all the peace of mind that you want. Now, Prof, I know that reading the arguments of Ivory Coast, the only thing they claim they hold on to is the expectation that this court will say, let's not use the traditional argument pushed by government of equidistance. Let's use equity and ask ourselves whether Cote d'Ivoire does not deserve something.
Okay. Now, I have to say this, that we've actually done a program which, of course, people may have forgotten, and which I think you have forgotten. And if you were sitting in my exam hall, you'd get 0.
Thank God you're not my professor.
You see,
Incredible.
the law at the moment is quite settled, and it went through a period of confusion, not confusion, let's just say lack of clarity, which is actually what Mr. Achampong was describing a few minutes ago. However, in a line of cases, roughly from about 2000, the judges evolved a methodology which was both simple, technical, and practical, but also equitable. So what the judges do, and elements of it were referred to by Mr. Achampong, what the judges do is that they first of all draw what's called a provisional equidistance line. Mr. Moderator, I think I may be beginning to jog your memory. You first draw a provisional equidistance line, and then second step, you look at factors which might persuade the court, or the court, by itself, if you like, then decides whether it is going to adjust the provisional equidistance line drawn or not. So when you first draw that provisional equidistance line, we're very lucky. It is virtually the same as the line which we claim to be the line. That's a first tick in our favor. So then you look at the circumstances which you need to look at to see whether you adjust it a little bit this way or that. Those circumstances, again, have now, after many years...
And let me invite my technical man, the production. Please, if you have the maps that's been supplied already, please bring us the maps. We want our viewers to see the maps so that Prof can clearly explain to them.
Okay. So basically, what you then do, okay, beautiful. So we have a map there. You can see between Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, there's a ... on your screen. Now that ... is the equidistance line that, in our view, is the boundary line.
Right.
Right. Okay. Now, when the court draws its provisional equidistance line in the main case, which will actually happen, sometime in after the hearing in 2017, they will sit down and they will draw a provisional equidistance line. It will be virtually the same as this line that you see on the map in front of you.
Okay.
Then the court will ask itself, are there any reasons why we should adjust this line against Ghana or against Ivory Coast, right? And again, over the years, there was a lot of dispute, but now we have a priority list of things that you look at. You look first of all at geographical features to see whether there is anything about the geography of the area which results in the equidistance line being not equitable. Remember, I said that they've managed to balance the equidistance versus the equitable argument, which Mr. Achampong correctly referred to earlier. Now, so first draw your provisional equidistance line. You look at the geography. Is there something about it which is not equitable to either Ghana or to Ivory Coast?
Ivory Coast.
Now,
and to the ordinary eye that looks at this, it does sound as if, or look as if, the line tilts or a bit eats into Ivory Coast.
Absolutely. However, as a matter of the pure, strict geography, it only begins to eat into Ivory Coast after 290 nautical miles out at sea. The absolute limit of where we are now in terms of exploiting things in Ghana's waters is 80 nautical miles. And the deepest limits for exploiting that they have in Brazil, Brazil has a lot of deep, is 120 nautical miles. There's currently no technology available, and I suspect not in our lifetime, which will be able to deal with stuff at 290 nautical miles. So when some of us are, shall we say, a little bit confident on this matter.
Are you a little bit, or you are really?
Well, shall we say I'm confident?
Yes, very confident.
Very confident. Okay, I'm being a bit gentle because Kudu Barton is here. I enjoy teasing him, as he knows. But anyway, now, so basically, 290 nautical miles, yes, an adjustment against Cote d'Ivoire on the geography of it, without a doubt. But we have a 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone. So that adjustment is going to be way beyond our exclusive economic zone. This is just purely on the geography. Yes, please.
Can I just come in here a little bit on the geography?
Yeah.
And also remember, in some of the documents out there, in some of the case that Cote d'Ivoire raises, that the reference point to actually draw the median line out there, it's not defined. So if you look at the contours of the coast, it's not a straightforward thing as you know.
And I'm glad that you raised this issue, because the Ivorian argument, and I'll state what the Ivorian argument is very simply. It is that there's difficulty with using the equidistance method for a number of technical reasons. And the position in international law is that the equidistance method is to be preferred. First, draw your provisional equidistance line. However, if there's difficulty, then basically you turn to something else. Now, this is a very straight coastline. It is not even an unstable coastline. For example, and again, this is where you see the Attorney General has actually been extremely tactical in choosing the team. Professor Sands, Matrix Chambers, Paul Reichler, Foley Hogg argued the case Bangladesh and Myanmar, which is the decision of this same ITLOS, which comes before, and ITLOS's jurisprudence favors equidistance. Every single judge on that panel favors equidistance. So it's not as if, you know,
but you're also mindful, when you say this, you're also mindful of what its president, Novel, something, Nelson,
Oliver Nelson,
who said that when you're pushing the equidistance, you know,
but Oliver Nelson when though?
You said
Oliver Nelson when though, because he's not been a president of ITLOS in the senses that you're suggesting.
I get it.
Yeah.
But he speaks to the fact that there would be an occasion when the equitable doctrine might be applied.
And so let's get back to Bangladesh.
That the equidistance doctrine is more settled in international law.
No, it is settled. First, draw a provisional equidistance line. That's a methodology of all the courts. ICJ, ITLOS, independent arbitral tribunals. Please, let's not. The equity then comes in to see whether you adjust after you first draw. Now, the Ivorian position is very simple, that you shouldn't even draw at all. And this is where it gets interesting. The most unstable coastline in the world, in the entire world, is Bangladesh. Right? Delta. Geography. Yes? I'm sorry, I'm behaving like a teacher.
Oh, go ahead.
So, in Bangladesh and Myanmar, this same ITLOS said, even though Bangladesh is notoriously unstable, we are still going to draw an equidistance line. The Ivorian coast is nowhere as unstable. You understand me? And the irony of it is that in that particular case, it was our legal team arguing for Bangladesh who are arguing that you should not draw. So whatever arguments are available on both sides, we have them both in our pocket.
I see.
Yes.
Okay, so, that's how come Chachu says that if you look at it from any angle, Ghana is
the legal team is extremely strong. But let me just go back and let me just, you know, if you like, tie it up. First, draw a provisional equidistance line. Look for balancing factors which will make you shift. And this is where the provisional measures decision has delivered a very good result for us, which is what we should be focusing on rather than the 1 billion, 500 million loss issue.
You're going back there.
No, it's important because we have to have a sense of a way of thinking through what is a complex, and my task here, I guess, is to provide a path.
Right.
Now, you see, so when you come to the balancing factors, after you do geography, which favors us, you go to what's called tacit conduct. Tacit conduct. And tacit conduct is what we discussed in the provisional measures case. So when they decided they were going to take us to provisional measures, actually, as a matter of legal strategy, we were quite happy because it gave us an opportunity to put forward our argument about the tacit practice, the tacit conduct of the countries. And that tacit conduct starts from 1970, when President Houphouët-Boigny signed a decree, a contract, and a piece of legislation in which he basically refers to the marine border with Ghana. Hufwe, the man himself, like Nkrumah, the founder, he did marine border Ghana, right? And that was completely persuasive before the tribunal, because you watch judges' language, and at some point when we said that, one of the judges who was sitting back like that did that because that's law.
Okay.
Right? Okay.
All right.
Please let me, I'll round up very quickly. So tacit conduct, we also got a very, very big tick. Our tacit conduct over the last 40 years, which has been approved by the court, favors equidistance as what is to be done. The last step is to see whether the zones which result are not disproportionate. And there again, I mean, it's a fairly technical procedure. And fortunately for us, the zones that arise are more or less roughly balanced. So, quite frankly, as far as the merits is concerned, this has actually significantly strengthened the arguments that we'll be putting forward during the merits phase as far as the tacit conduct of the parties is concerned.
Thank you very much. Now, Mike, I'm going to come to you, but Theo has to leave us, and before he does that, I want him to tell us what his understanding of the ruling is. Basic. What's your understanding of the ruling?
Oh, well, I mean, it's quite clear. So the status quo continues. First oil from 10 doesn't change. And also in terms of the fact that from mid-2016 onwards, production will come on stream as well. Just a little bit of the economic context, because that's where I think I can make slightly more in terms of the substance of this debate. That 10 and the Sankofa and the new discoveries, these are critical to Ghana's medium-term energy security goals. The gas from the field is expected to actually power the thermal power plants for our generation. And remember, we've had issues with gas from Nigeria. It's been completely unreliable. We need about 200 standard cubic feet a day of gas to fire all our thermal power plants. If 10 is to come on stream and nothing goes unhindered, that could potentially give us about 170 standard cubic feet of gas a day. So that's kind of how important this is to Ghana's medium-term energy security goals. And so in terms of the ruling itself, the development of the field continues for phase 1. We potentially have saved ourselves over 2 billion, in terms of losses to the field. We have not quantified the sort of indirect and induced impact of that on the economy, but as a ballpark figure, this is what I have of the top of my head. And so if we were even pricing oil, say at $70 a barrel, and if the court has said we should stop everything, then we could have lost about 2.2 billion thereabout. So things continue as planned. Phase 1 is not affected. I thought, and my analysis is that a couple of the wells planned for full field optimization could potentially be delayed at a certain cost. Right. But that cost is not significant in terms of the whole big context that we're looking at. So 10 is big for Ghana. It's so crucial.
Yeah, it is.
We cannot just let this slide.
I hear is it 5 or 6 billion? I hear some quotes 5 billion, some quotes 6 billion US dollars. That's what 10 means to us.
In terms of what?
More over the period.
It's more than that. Okay.
It will be more. I think it will be more.
It will be more.
Maybe 6 in terms of the capital expenditure, but in terms of its impact on the economy, 6 billion is nothing compared to what we're talking about here.
Okay. All right. So, any fine points that we are missing that you want to point to before you leave us?
Just trying to see. Yes. It's still early days yet, I would say. The big chunk here is the main ruling come 2017. That really is it. Does the provisional measures ruling in any way give us an idea of what we have to expect come 2017, I look at it from two different angles here. That the fact that Cote d'Ivoire even passed that plausibility test, no matter how ill-defined it was, gives a certain credence to them. But we also have history, like Prof said.
Right.
We've got 40 years of practice here, tacit conduct, the nature of the geography and all of that. And I think the court would put all of this together to arrive at a judgment that would not in any way, lead either parties feeling disaffected.
Right.
In a
because whatever the outcome is, it's also very important to the peace between the two countries. Hopefully, we are not going to have any further threats from Ivory Coast or to Talo or the guys who are on there. And as far as the court delivers its judgment and it's for us totally, then we have to go pack bag and baggage, go sleep. Thank you very much, Theo, for joining us. Now I'll share some of your views that you have been sending to us on the issues, your views and your questions. Well, first, the very first issue that I got my guest to speak briefly about, you have Kwame Intakrade, who is saying TUC must be told that as long as it incites workers to embark on unnecessary strike actions to disturb government, they would be taken to court. Serious. Okay. And then Chum in Nima says it's very sad that Ghanaians can see that the basic fact is that President Mahama doesn't have what it takes to administer this country. Okay. It was a discussion about the power issue. So speak to that issue. We do politics with everything, don't we? And then Siedu Spintus Road says that Samson, this Dumso problem has been going on for too long. The president should tell us something substantial. Okay, so saying that it is temporary, it's not substantial enough for you. And then John in Nungwa says something. Can you please help me on the current status of our various installed thermal generation capacities across the country while we wait on the power badges? John, I want lights. That's all I'm interested in. Thank you very much. And now, you're welcome back. This Newsfile, your most authoritative news analysis show. And on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. Theo Champon just left us, and we say a lot of thanks to you for making your way here. Theo just actually got into town just yesterday from London. Now, Richard Kwame Ampo says, sake of Dumso. Okay, that's bad English. Kwame, change it later. You want to say because of Dumso. Because of Dumso, I can't watch your show this morning, but your repeat in the evening will be good for him. Thank you very much. He would want to have the full length in the evening. Production, you're being warned not to cut part of the show. This one says, Stephen Kwashiga Ajololo says, I don't understand this, the president. He often talks as if he's living in a different planet, or as if he's oblivious of the crisis that the country is going through. All that I have to say is that, okay, I won't help you do your politics. I won't be a conveyor belt for your politics. Now, Abdul Kudos Zeblim says, let's remain patient and support the people in charge and government to fix the power crisis once and for all. Thank you. Emmanuel Kwame Gapson says, the president should keep on promising. We will keep on reminding him of his promises. Okay, and you also add a bitter twist of voting into it. I'm sorry, it won't help you. Santo Vitus Dakura says, the era of Dumso cell genset is lucrative. So this is the time when those who are selling generator sets are making a lot of profit. Thanks for your message. Ronald Yabua says, something, please ask Labour this question for me. What has Labour done to help rectify the Dumso crisis? As Ghanaians, we must learn to provide solutions rather than only criticizing the government. Nana Kweku Adumako Nyako says that it seems to me that the president and his advisors have no idea how to go about this power crisis. Oh, there is 450 power badges coming from Turkey. That's an idea, isn't it? Okay. Bonti Benjamin says that the Mahama-led government has failed to walk the talk with regards to the Dumso and fighting corruption. Okay, I will not do your politics for you, the rest of it. The Ato Kwamena Sefua says, a president that cannot manage his energy situation cannot also manage the people. Bedzo David says, Samson, if smart businesses are not laying off workers because of Dumso, but are rather investing more into their businesses, why can't the president also be smart in managing the economy, thereby preventing his government from going to the IMF for a bailout in order to get credibility in the eyes of the international community? And that's sort of a direct response from you to the president when he says that smart businesses are not laying off or collapsing as his critics want us to believe. Thank you very much. It appears that most of the messages I find here have to deal with the electricity situation and not about the maritime boundary dispute. Now, I'm going to wrap up with you, Mike. From where you sit, how does it look like for us?
Okay, I just want to make a few quick notes, which is that this recent hearing was not about the merits of the substantive case.
That's correct.
And I think we have to keep that in mind to be able to make fair judgments or predictions about how the eventual ruling is going to go. We need to hear the substantive pleadings. And so I'm not going to make any pronouncements on how I think this is going to go. I'll just make a few other quick points. You know, when you read the judge's ruling, I think it's paragraph 58, 59, thereabout, they try to clarify. Of course, they make a lot of considerations. 58 says that considering that before prescribing provisional measures, this, of course, talks about the plausibility issue. So we want to understand why the court granted some of the preliminary measures for Ivory Coast. Of course, the first one is the plausibility issue, but it's 59 that worries me a bit. 59 says that considering that a special chamber observes that by instituting arbitral proceedings under Annex 7 to the Convention against Côte d'Ivoire, Ghana itself recognized the existence of a dispute concerning the maritime boundary between the two states and the existence of opposing claims of the parties to the disputed area. It may be interpreted variously, but going forward, this is one that worries me a bit.
Why? But they just stated a fact.
Yes, but whilst we've made a very strong, a very compelling case that history is on our side, that by Ivory Coast's own tacit actions, it recognizes the existing boundary. This appears to say that Ghana itself, by taking the case to UNCLOS Annex 7, appears to admit that the boundary is in dispute. That's my reading of this. And I'm sure we have an eminently qualified team. I'm sure they are going to deal with this. But once Professor Mfojo is here, this is a consideration by the court that I think is problematic, and we have to pay attention to that. The other one is, of course, is that
no, sorry, but I don't really get it.
Yep.
Ghana, we get up and say, after several meetings with Ivory Coast to try and negotiate, we didn't make a headway.
Yep.
And we decide that the last resort is to go to the court. So we go to the court.
Yes.
And the court says, by submitting to the court, we agree, we admit that there's a dispute. And you say that's problematic?
And not an admission of the legitimacy
not
of
the
the
legitimacy, of
claims.
course.
Exactly.
Yeah, not an admission.
Yeah.
But if you read the Ivorian pleadings, they've tried to make a lot around this particular issue. That's why I said again that we have an eminently qualified team. Professor Sands, for example, is one of the best in the world. And I'm sure, we have a strong case is going to go fine. I'm just raising notes about issues that I think are of serious concern that we have to pay attention to. The other point has to do with, the potential impact of the second measure, which had to do with Ghana taking steps to ensure that no data that we've collected so far will be used to the detriment of Ivory Coast.
Right.
We've tried to analyze the potential impact of that ruling. And again, the court was not specific on what it defines by detriment. It did grant that Ghana and the 10 companies it has licensed should take steps, make sure that none of the information, whether by collection or processing, is used to the detriment of Ivory Coast. Of course, Ivory Coast had wanted us to completely stop collecting and processing data. Yeah. The court did not grant that. But if
so they got it partially.
But the data is always restricted.
Yes.
First of all, it's our own property. Two, if you're not doing any business there, you don't access it. So strictly speaking, I think it's a bit of superfluous ruling.
You think so?
Yeah,
absolutely.
I
side with Mr. Kokuba.
Oh, I see.
Yes, it is.
Okay, that's interesting. Let me just.
Okay, so you have no problem with that because
no. These are points that I'm raising.
You felt that was a problem, but
potentially because the court did not explicitly say how the two sides, because it said we should make sure that information is not used to the detriment of Ivory Coast. What is the mechanism for verifying that the information is not used to the detriment of Ivory Coast? Would that require, for example, that Ivory Coast participates in the monitoring of the use of the information? Would that require, for example, that some of our companies potentially hand over information to Ivory Coast? The court wasn't clear on the verification mechanism for this. And the point is that if, supposing that the mechanism would require somewhat that Ivory Coast would be privy to some of the information that we have already, this could impact us. One way is that currently, the information asymmetry between the two countries favors us. We know more about the resources in the disputed field than they do.
Right.
Should the verification mechanism in any way enable them to have access to some of the information, this information asymmetry could potentially reverse to an equilibrium state.
Okay.
That's critical because once they get to learn more about the field, it gives them, it's that knowledge.
It empowers them
to prepare for the substantive case even better.
Okay.
So
like
these,
when you don't have a case, you don't have a case.
So these are all
what
potential issues that I just want us to take over. The last one I just want to make has to do with the issue of the equidistant line. I've just seen something that's a bit worrying. Again, Prof can enlighten me on this, but I've read, if you read paragraph, there's a paragraph in the case between Myanmar and Bangladesh, which Doliver Nelson chaired. He's the former president. And I'm reading from paragraph 129 of the judgment. This is what it says, and I quote, "It follows from Article 15 of the Convention that before the equidistance principle is applied, consideration should be given to the possible existence of historic title or other special circumstances relevant to the area to be delimited." I repeat again. It says before the equidistance principle is applied. Before. Consideration should be given to the possible existence of historic title.
Yes, that's number one for us.
That's number one.
Move on.
Good. Or other special considerations.
Okay, good. So, no special considerations in this circumstances.
I just would want us to be a little more, to pay a little more attention to the pleadings that the Ivorians have made.
Okay.
Well,
the team is.
I just want to say that out of the advocates, the counselors handling this case, 3 of them are, if you like, in the top 10 best in the world when it comes to these sort of matters.
That's right.
Professor Sands on the Ghanaian side, Sir Michael Woods, and Elaine Pele on the Ivorian side.
Right.
2 on the Ivorian side, 1 on the Ghanaian side. I tend to think that if the Ivorians didn't have a really plausible, probably compelling case 2 of the top 10 advocates in this area
Expensive.
would not probably, have paid attention to this. I just
That's-
want us to.
that's a different
all
argument.
I
They
want
want
to
their
say is
money.
that they want their money, but still,
And they are not the
but that's
judges.
also not fair.
that's
I
also
know.
That's
yeah.
also fair.
I just, my
But I
point
have
is
to
that,
raise it.
yeah.
Okay.
I just think that we should pay a little more attention to the case that Ivorians are making, a little more attention than we're doing now. I have absolute confidence in our team, but I just want us to have a little more discussion.
Right.
Pay more attention
Right.
to the issues they are raising.
Right. Right.
And let me just say that, and again I want to reiterate the initial debate that Professor Fojo and myself had around the 1 billion issue.
You're not going back to it.
No, I'm not going back to
Okay.
it. I just want to say that that analysis should not be misinterpreted to mean that we're making pronouncements that will hurt either Talo or Ghana's interest. Of course, because both company and country's medium-term prospects are tied to this project. But I think that if we really care about both Talo and Ghana, we should also be very mindful of the potential cost whatsoever they are. Whether you believe it's 1 billion or
Right.
1.5 or
Okay.
lower.
Thank you. Thank you. This I want us to just end it, and just 2 minutes. Don't do more than that. You read portions where both parties are expected to cooperate and to mutually do things.
Yep.
For example, to ensure that the continental shelf is not harmed,
Yep.
and among other issues, the marine environment is not seriously harmed, and so on. Now, and that they do not take any unilateral actions
Yes.
that may, as it were, aggravate the dispute.
Yeah.
The court, by this, is bringing the two parties together.
Absolutely.
Should they explore the opportunity of this, coming together, meeting and having tea,
I think
to look at a possibility of resolving this matter even before 2017? Most of the cases that have had to go to the court ended up being resolved by diplomacy anyway.
Absolutely. I just want to say that, statistically, I think about 50% of the world's maritime borders are not really settled yet. The 50% that are settled after the 50% that have been settled, 90% have been done through bilateral settlements.
Okay.
Between two countries, two or more countries.
Right.
The 10% that has gone through the courts, have gone either way.
Okay.
Okay? So my point is that, and we've run a few scenarios on the maps. Again, we've listened to the Ivorian case, we've listened to the Ghanaian case. The worrying thing is that of the tin field, it appears that the one that is most at risk, however the case goes, whether through bilateral settlement, if we decide that a little bit of it should go to them, if the court should decide to redemarcate, the particular portion of the tin field, which appears to be particularly at risk, is the Enyira discovery.
Okay.
That happens to be the most fertile of all the three.
Oh, I see.
So, we need to keep all of this in mind.
All right.
If we think that, potential risk analysis, you think that, look, should the court really demarcate and we completely lose ERA? Or do we open bilateral talks and
end up to share?
Thank you
very much.
So there are those options.
No matter the proportion.
I
Thank you.
think that
Thank
we
you.
should explore all of this.
Now, Prof, a minute or two.
2 minutes.
What would you say?
2 minutes.
I mean,
and no
it's
more
okay.
than that.
It's okay. What would you say? You would say that we shouldn't entertain any bilateral or any mutual.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely not. You see, because what the court has done, which we all should understand, is that they have actually said that everything within the areas that we believe belongs to us. So why should we be going to open bilateral talks on stuff which already belongs to us?
Okay.
I think it's really important to understand this. And that's why I have used, from time to time, words like misleading and so on, because this is an important national asset, and we must not be misled by speculation.
Right.
So if you actually, and that's why I've been actually really quite vigorous and, you know, being on the attack on this issue, right? Because as far as the Equidistance, let me just reiterate, nothing that the Ivorians discover from information and so on has any relevance whatsoever to the merits.
All right.
First, draw a provisional Equidistance line.
Right.
See whether there are factors which lead you to adjust. And then if the result is disproportionate, which is again the equity principle,
right,
then you make a further adjustment. That's it.
Okay.
Nothing that they learn from provisional measures is going to influence anything in any way whatsoever. Thank you very much.
Now, Kweku, on that, he definitely will not say, as a member of the team, he will not say this is something we should want to encourage because, and as he says, he's so sure about his case that what we say in the parlance of arbitration, that their partner, that is best alternative negotiated agreement, they have the upper hand. So going into a negotiation will mean that you want to give something small compromise, and we are not ready for that. And that's why we're not opening up for that.
Yes, I'm against going to the negotiating table. We had tried a series of negotiations with them. They showed bad faith. Their conduct alone killed that negotiation option.
Okay.
And we had no choice but to proceed to the appropriate forum to deal with the matter.
Right.
So for me, negotiations we should forget. The guy is just, you can't trust them in negotiations. They were issuing threats to the companies and advertising some of our blogs as theirs in international fora to try and get investors. I'm sure you know that.
Yeah.
Yes. How do you negotiate a deal with such a country or a people, you know, who are supposed to be friends and brothers and sisters? So I think where we went is the appropriate forum. I can understand the drift, get the drift of some of our friends, including a good brother here. Perhaps they want to prepare us for possible shocks. So it's a certain shock therapy that he's trying to push here on a note of caution, assuming without admitting the unexpected may happen. Maybe. They are also as well patriotic. I'm not going to go out there and criticize or question their patriotism. I think they are Ghanaians, they're worried, they're asking us to be a bit cautious and not to be over enthusiastic.
Thank you very much. I'll do my very final break here and return to look at the Bust BDC debate, which I say I still can't understand. Maybe I will be helped to appreciate it better when we come back. Kweku says he has the same problem, and honestly talking. We'll be right back.